Ford abandons Ford, and maybe the USA too. You've all heard the desperate gambling addict's plea. Just one more bet, please. Please, I know I'll win this time. Guaranteed. It's a sure thing. Well, for Ford Europe, they just got their last loan of nearly €5 billion from Ford in the States. And the last thing a rapidly failing motor manufacturer needs is yet more debt. But that's all that was on offer. And it's not a good offer when you look into the details. Take it or go bust. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. Well, while most have been focused on VW and their financial difficulties, Ford Europe has been quietly racking up the debt, failing to produce the sales until it has finally reached the limit. Well, previously Ford Motor Company over in the States had an agreement that simply underwrote any debt, but it seems that's all come to an end, with even the mighty Ford USA in serious financial trouble. Sales are down, profits are down, outlook's down, job cuts and tariffs are looming with their reliance on cheap labour in Mexico. Ford Motors previously would just bail out its subsidiaries without a thought, but coffers are starting to run dry and the income is proving slow to come in. After a difficult foray into the EV world with their on-off, on-again approach, first aiming for the sky, then realising it's not quite so easy, then joint ventures, then brand new subsidised factories, then, well, it all seemed to just grind to a halt. And then Trump and Clown arrived, and what anyone thought was happening just went into the melting pot. Previously, tariffs always worked as a threat, did no harm to industry. Dangle them, everyone backs down, Trump removes them, the world just goes on, just now on Trump's terms. Only this time, just like Dr. Evil, Trump asked for so much that nobody could back down, so Trump was forced to double down, then double again. The result? The tariffs arrived at a ridiculous level that practically spelt the end of most industry in the Western world. Add in Trump promising to cut the IRA, which that's the Inflation Reduction Act, which offers a £7,500 tax incentive on EVs, and you see a sudden rush to buy EVs at the expense of ICE, as the US plays catch-up, but Trump doesn't like them. Well, that was before he grabbed the massive cash handout from his new buddy, Musk, and oh yeah, well now EVs, they're not that bad after all. Flip-flop, flip-flop. Maybe he should ask Elon if he should cancel the IRA. After all, he must know best. So where does that leave Ford and Jim Farley? Well, pretty much up the creek without a paddle. See, he's afraid of Trump because he's totally unpredictable, and now he's afraid of the UAW, Union of Auto Workers, because they're so predictable. The last round of pay deals they negotiated in 2024 added the best part of $1,000 onto each and every car they now produce, ICE and EV. That's not fair. That money should really be going into CEO bonuses or shareholder dividends, where it always used to go. But he's now just announced that he's looking into where he will build his next factory, and that's a serious look. Just saying he's looking is serious because with 25% tariffs on all things Mexican and Canadian, surely there's nowhere else to look but the US of A. But there, of course, is the UAW awaiting him. And that's already costing him $1,000 a car. How much more is it going to cost him if he builds a factory there? But then again, how much would the tariff cost if he built in Mexico using their cheaper labour rates, no unions, no pesky EPA, Environmental Protection Agency rules, no tariff on China parts exported directly to Mexico? Ford already lose tens of thousands of dollars on every EV they're trying to sell. To do it the decent way, why bother? Just assemble Chinese-made bits in Mexico. That must be the equation he's now calculating. Yeah, seriously. A one-off 25% tariff on the whole car for getting it into the States and selling it, and zero tariffs on anything and everything he buys everywhere else in the world, i.e. China, to then just assemble it in Mexico at their lower labour rate. Tempting. But it must be, or he wouldn't be looking. He'd just be announcing a new plant in America. Well, in the meantime, back to Ford Europe, and they're going downhill rapidly. Never-ending drain on finances. Bottomless pit. And that long-standing agreement to bail them out no matter what. So how about that sweet deal? Offer to wipe the slate clean, pay off their total debts, estimated to be about $5 billion. but on the condition that that's it, no more. Not a penny more, not a penny, well, more. So no debt, but still losing money hand over fist. But of course, it is a loan, so they're still in debt, just now to Ford USA, who, well, they might be a bit kinder, not foreclose on them so quickly, might they? Well, having ditched all the smaller cars like the car, the Fiesta, in the scramble for the higher profit margin, bigger luxurious cars that also didn't sell very well, they now found that they've cut too many corners, and almost every penny they make, and a few besides, are now being spent on warranty work as the quality of the parts being installed falls still further, with pressure on their suppliers to cut prices. And the quality of the workmanship falls still further as the production lines speed up to reduce their costs. They now stumble onto their newest nightmare: product recalls. See, warranty costs are generally of a fixed duration, say 3 years. Then after that, you can just refuse to cover the cost, and in fact, you can charge your customer, making a nice profit in the service department. But if all of your cars suffer the same issue, that's a product recall, and that can happen long after, many years after the warranty has expired, and you cannot bluff your way out of these, and they can cover upwards of 1 million cars. And these are getting bigger and more common. Double whammy. Well, at last, Ford Europe is now no longer a liability to Ford America. They're set free, set adrift, and we all know how that is going to end, as Leo and Kate found out after hitting the iceberg and being set adrift. Ford Europe needed that nearly $5 billion loan because they too weren't making any money, weren't selling many cars. Their latest efforts, like the Capri, well, they're going nowhere. It's basically a reworked but more expensive VW platform that suffered the same software issues. Imagine that. And notice the word loan. This is just a tax write-off to Ford in the States. This is just a way to cut their losses, or specifically Ford Europe's future losses that they can see that they would previously have covered. And then, of course, they don't really help themselves. The Mach-E got absolutely slated and hammered in the States for calling it a Mustang when everyone knew it wasn't. So what did they go and do? They launched the Capri, which also wasn't. Even the advertising confused. I quote, "A sports car soul in a practical SUV and a coupe crossover." What the hell does all that word salad mean? That covers everything except a van. The original Capri was an out-and-out sports car that was a poor man's E-Type. It had massive long bonnet, no room in the back, huge bulge in the bonnet for the ridiculously overpowered 3-litre V6 version. The EV Capri is just a Ford Explorer or VW ID.5. They now announced to the motoring press that the new ID.1, due out if they're lucky in 2027, and likely to make a loss, already announced, is likely to be their first SDV, that's their software-defined vehicle, with a massive help from their new friend Rivian. Oh yeah, and costing them a few billion quid along the way. So what does that make the Capri? Well, yeah, just another bug-ridden VW. Yet the only variant in the Capri range worth having is mid-55k to start with, but with the extras that you need, it's well over 60,000. Not selling? I wonder why. Well, the unions in Europe are also getting very edgy about them going bust, but I'm not just going to stop them demanding massive wage rises for the workers, at least for as long as they can keep the company afloat. See, the car side of the business is now very risky. Okay, terminal. Well, the commercial side is actually doing quite well, reasonably strong. And that's not looking like changing anytime soon, and time is not on Ford's side. The EU is pushing ahead with the CO2 targets for cars, requiring more and more of them to be zero emission, not their strong point. And the Chinese are there waiting just in case Europeans cannot or will not comply. Europe is rapidly becoming the dearest place in the world to produce any type of car, Germany specifically. And all too often what they choose to make is just what they've always made. Stick to tradition. It's always worked in the past. Let's see how that works out for them. But does anyone else find it a bit hypocritical that you go into the factories, you can find all the very latest robotic production machines and cutting-edge computers running on AI, and they got state-of-the-art wind tunnels giving us the lowest coefficient of drag in the world, but they produce a body style that looks, well, totally recognizable as almost last century. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On.